Sure. My name is Harry Coffer. I am 23 years old and I live in the beautiful Boston, Massachusetts right now. When I was 13, I lost my mom to cancer. It's, it's something that I have never really talked about before. Obviously my family knows, close friends know, everyone knows that this is something that's happened to me in my life, but I've never really, expressed any emotions around it or anything like that. And so this is certainly a learning experience for both me and anyone who will be watching this. When I was 12, so at the time I would have been 12, my sister would have been 10, my younger brother 6, and another younger brother 4. I remember that we were sent one night to go to my sister's best friend's house to sleep over. And being, a 12-year-old preteen kid, this was not something I was happy about. I kind of slept over and it was fine, but when that happened, I knew something was wrong. It was so out of the blue that this would be going on, that for my parents to kind of want a night alone and for it to be so abrupt and so sudden. I was young, but I knew something was off. And so we went to school the next day, and then that night we kind of met in the living room as a family. And it must have been very hard. I was 12, but looking back, they were talking. They were trying to relay this message to a lot of young children. And my mom asked the group of us kids, "Do you know what cancer is?" And I knew, and I was 12, but my siblings didn't know. And so when she said that, I wish I could say that, oh man, my heart dropped, or oh, I knew right away. When that happened though, I didn't know where the conversation was going, but I had that inkling that something bad was happening, and all of a sudden we're being asked what cancer is. And so my mom did her best to say, cancer is it's a disease where the cells in your body attack each other, and it's a disease that makes people very sick, and could even, if unless it's treated, or even if it is treated, that it's something that someone could die from. And when she said that, I don't know what it was, but right then I knew it was her that was sick, and it wasn't, she wasn't about to say that, oh, your grandma's sick or someone else. And so I blurted out, "You have cancer?" That was my 12-year-old self's reaction. And she just nodded her head and said yes. And then I don't even remember how I reacted. I just remember blurting out, "You have cancer," and kind of stealing that moment from her of being able to tell us. So that's how I found out my mom was sick. And it took a long time to process how sick she was going to be. I don't think I even really ever knew until after she passed away, and I was able to look back on it. She decided when she was kind of at her worst, and she battled cancer for about a year and a half before passing away. And when she was at her worst, and I think she knew that eventually she was going to lose the battle, but it's not something that had ever occurred to me when she was going through it. So she made these videos that she wanted her kids to see after she passed away. And so a couple months after she passed away, we decided sort of as a family to watch these videos, and two things that I remember from those videos that really struck me and have really like changed who I am through who I am now. The first one was she reflected on what it was like to be diagnosed with cancer, and she remembered thinking when it first happened, why me? And I'm sure it's something that everyone who gets diagnosed with something so painful has to go through, and they're, all they want to be is healthy and normal, and their reaction is, why me? What have I done to deserve this? And she expressed in this video that she felt really guilty for thinking that. And she went on about how if she's going to say, why me? Why am I going to die from this disease? Then she also would have to say, God, why me? Why am I the one who got to live such a wonderful life? Why am I the one who got to, find the man of my dreams and marry the perfect husband? Why am I the person who got picked to have 4 beautiful children? And why am I someone who was so lucky to have all these great things happen? And when you look at it that way, all those positives totally overwhelm any sort of negative consequences of cancer. And so that's something that that's really stuck with me. And another one was that when her grandmother had passed away, long before I was born, or I might have been very little, she remembers, she was really upset. She was very close with her grandmother, and she remembers that one night when she was kind of in her room remembering her grandmother, that the lights flickered, and she remembers thinking, oh, that must be Grandma here. And so she mentioned in the video that, every time you're in a room and a light turns off or a light turns back on, that she wants us to think that it's her, and that it's Flash, I love you. And that's the message that gets sent every time a light goes on and off. And it's not something I think about every time a light goes on and off, but certainly every now and then, when all of a sudden a dark room becomes very bright, or the opposite, or a very bright room turns dark, I think, Flash, I love you. And it's very, very comforting. My lasting memories were not the deep emotional valleys. It was, but rather the sort of up and down, like, cyclical nature of being sick, where you're at your lowest point, but then trying to climb up to the top to make sure that you have memories with everyone before you go. And I'll start with the good first. When my mom was battling cancer, she was a very, very big football fan, very American football. She loved football, and she was a very big Patriots fan, and she really wanted to start going to games. We went to a number of games, and they were very, very good. And they were so good that they went to the Super Bowl that year, and it was their second time going to the Super Bowl. And my mom decided that as a family we were going to go. And this is a memory that very few people get to have, and that I'm so fortunate that I got the opportunity to go, and they went and they won, and it was great. It was so great, and the amount of fun that we had that weekend is something I'll never forget. And there's a picture of my room right as they kicked the winning field goal to go up by 3 points, of my mom and I hugging. And I don't know who took the picture. I don't know how they could have timed it that well, but it really encapsulated the memory really well. And so she was very aware that she needed to make memories with her family, while she still could. And I don't know if it's irony, but the interesting thing about that is that while she had a good time, the memories weren't for her. She's gone now. She can't remember anything. What ended up happening is that the memories were for us. She wanted to make sure that our memories of her were not of her being sick, but of us having a very good time and of us having fun as a family. And just, we did things that as a family we would not have done otherwise. We took a nice vacation. That was a lot of fun too. And that's something that's very hard for someone who's sick to do. When you're going through so much pain, there's the idea of like getting up and having adventures is the last thing you want to do. But also in between, when she was sick, it was tough to really realize at the time, but looking back on it, the sheer amount of pain that she went through is really unthinkable. It's there would be long periods of time where she wouldn't leave her bed, and that was very hard because you go up, you say hi, but she's very tired, very weak, not a lot of energy, and it's very easy to just sort of go on your day as if she's not there, and just the sheer pain that you could see that she was going through when she tried to make an effort. She loved reading stories to my youngest brother, who was 4, and she was really torn up about the fact that because he was so young, he might not remember her. And so she tried very, very hard to read stories with him at night and to really spend time with him. And the sheer effort it took to even try and be a mom when you were that sick was pretty frightening to see. And so just like the sort of everyday ordeal that is life when you're sick is something that is I don't think anyone can really understand. I certainly didn't understand when I was going through it. Only now, looking back on it, do I realize just like how hard it must have been. She actually wrote a letter to me. She wrote a couple. One of them was when I went off to college, and I read. That was very nice. Another one she wrote, and it's in an envelope to be given to all 4 of her kids on our wedding day. And I have obviously not read that yet, but that's something I'm looking forward to. Yeah, and you'll have to forgive me. It is a little hard to talk about, but I will do my best. When she was sick, it never occurred to me that she was going to pass away. I knew she was sick, and I knew there was no there is treatment, but I knew that the treatment wasn't going to heal her. But I had never thought about when the day would come that we would lose her. So one night, she had a seizure in her sleep, and paramedics, rushed into her house and rushed her to the hospital. And I slept through the whole thing. Didn't wake up. My dad joked the next morning that all four of us kids were completely out, despite 10 trained medical personnel in our house for probably over an hour. And so the next day, so this happened at night. The next day we went to the hospital, and she was in a hospital room in the bed, but she wasn't really. I had never seen my mom like this. Whenever I had talked to her when she was sick, even throughout her pain, throughout her tired, she was always able to communicate back, and she was always there with you, even if you could see sort of the pain she was going through. And here in the hospital, she was having trouble staying awake, like physically, her just like really too weak to stay awake. And the doctors who were there had said she'd slept all day, but when we kids went in, she really tried. She really tried to wake up, and she did. You could tell she was awake, but she couldn't talk. I don't know why, but she couldn't talk. She couldn't really communicate. She could really only barely open her eyes. And so I remember I went up, I held her hand, and I just sort of told her about my day, about walking through the hospital, because people had told me, oh, you should talk to her, but she couldn't talk to me, so I was just spewing nonsense about what I saw in the hospital, because that was pretty cool. And she was really fighting to stay awake, and I could see there was so much pain, and when she opened her eyes, it was really, really hard. It was very hard to look at, actually. And I only stayed in the room for a couple minutes, not because I was in so much pain, but because I couldn't really think of a reason to stay in the room. She wasn't really there. She was more just a very sick patient in a hospital, and I was 13 at the time, and I didn't sort of want to just talk to my mom, who was asleep. It was not something I wanted to do, and I remember I had a math exam the next day, so I just kind of waited in the waiting room, and I did homework and studied, and at that moment it didn't cross my mind at all that that would be the last time I ever saw her. I remember thinking, because she had gone to the hospital several times before, just for a couple days here and there, and then we'll come back home. I remember thinking she'll come back home in a couple days, and that wow, she's really sick. I'm sure they'll give her medicine and she'll be back to normal in a couple days. I don't know why that's what I thought. It was a really, really, really silly mindset that I was in. I the signs were there. All of a sudden, my grandparents flew in from Florida. I remember I was told that my uncles were coming from California, and I was just really happy that they were coming. The idea that they were coming because my mom was sick didn't cross my mind. Like those two pieces of the puzzle I just didn't put together. And so I left that night from the hospital really thinking that I would just see her in a couple days when we got back, when she got back from the hospital. And so the next morning, despite my whole family being there, despite everyone going to the hospital again to go see my mom, I went to school. And I had a math test. And it didn't occur to me not to go. I never even thought that there was another decision. My family was going to the hospital. I was like, oh, that's nice that they're going to go visit mom. Like, I'll make sure to visit her after school, and I'll tell her how my test went. And so I went to school. It was a normal day. As I was walking back home, my dad picked me up from school. And this is after school. So I had been in school the whole day. I wasn't taken out early or anything like that. And he picked me up from school. And I thought we were going to drive to the hospital. I never got picked up from school. I always walked home. And I thought he was picking me up to drive to the hospital. And so I thought, oh, this is great. I don't have to walk home today. We lived at the top of a very large hill. It was always annoying to walk home. And but instead we drove home. And we went in through the garage into the basement, which is also something we never did. And looking back, the reason we didn't do that was because there were a lot of people in the house. But I didn't know that, and so we were all alone in the basement. And he told me, earlier this morning, your mom died. And that was the first minute that I'd even ever thought that was possible, that I would have ever lost her. And so the fact that I was learning that it was possible and that it happened at the same time was a nightmare. And immediately I was so angry at myself for having gone to school and for not being there, and I realized that moment in which I had sort of been talking at my mom in the hospital, not really talking with her, was the last time I'd ever see her. And my dad, he was so great, and he was, he had just lost his wife earlier that day, and he was trying to comfort me in the basement, but I didn't have anything to say. My reaction was entirely internal. I just didn't even say anything. There was nothing he could do. There was no emotion that I could express to him. I don't know what he thought that I was going through, but it was probably a conversation he wasn't prepared for. And so like in the basement on the couch is when I learned that my mom died. And to this day, that's the only regret that I have in life, is having gone to school that day and not being able to say goodbye. Eats me up that there's nothing I can do about it, and that I'm sure she knows, but I never got to tell her how much I loved her. Sure, I told her, but I'm sure it would have meant something in the moment, and you know, she was surrounded by family when she passed away, but not me. Yeah, and as I said earlier, you know, I'm not the only one who has gone through that. I'm not the only one who regrets not being there at the right moment. I'm not the only one who regrets not spending more time. I'm sure these are regrets that everyone who's going through this has to some extent, and so I you know, I hope that I can convey that these emotions are very okay. They are something that everyone deals with. There are other people going through it as well, and it's something that you can come out the other side and be fine. Of me and my 3 siblings, we all had extremely different reactions to what happened, and so I really got to learn firsthand that there's no wrong way to grieve. My sister, she locked herself in the attic for a long time, in the several days afterward. And people would come up and talk to her. And she was, at least in outward expression, the saddest. You know, I remember trying to be strong, trying to pretend like I wasn't feeling a hurt, because I had 2 younger brothers that it was very important to me that they looked up to me, and I wanted to be a good example. There's nothing really to be a good example of, but I didn't know that at the time. And so I just sort of went on like talking to people as if nothing had really happened. And the influx of family and friends that you have to interact with is totally overwhelming. I remember after everyone had gone home and it was just me, that I was really tired, really tired, so tired. And I laid down on the floor of the living room, and I thought, I'll just rest a couple minutes before going to my room and going to bed. And then I woke up the next morning. And that's just how tired I was, that I just fell asleep on the floor of the living room the whole night. My 2 little brothers, they didn't really grasp what was happening, which I was a little envious at the time. And then I saw at the funeral a couple days later, my little brother Isaac, who was 6, though going on 7, his birthday was actually a couple days after the funeral, and he was crying at the funeral. And I don't know if he was really sad or if he saw everyone else crying. And you know, when you're with people who are crying, it's very easy to get caught up in the emotion of the moment as well. And that broke my heart, to see him crying, just to see like him as sort of a victim of this circumstance was really tough. And I really kind of wanted to be a strong big brother for him, and he and I was crying, and he saw me cry, and he was crying too, and that was very difficult. For me, I remember really not wanting to talk about it to kids at school or to teachers, or I was really trying to give off the impression that I was the exact same and that nothing had happened to me. I doubt it worked, but that was sort of how I wanted to be treated. And And I don't know if how my friends thought of me afterwards or anything like that. But that was sort of my aftermath, was that I was exhausted and was just dying for it to be over, and doing everything I could to pretend like it was. It's a popular question that I've been asked before. Would you say you value life more? Has it changed? The truth is, I don't know. It's not like I was, I don't think people particularly undervalue life, and I don't think that, I wouldn't say I'm driven to live more in the moment or something cliched, but it occurs to me all the time that the people I care about, specifically friends, might not be there tomorrow. And that's something I focus on, and it's something that I'd encourage others to, because I'd say that the connections I've made throughout my life have done such a tremendous job shaping who I am, and they contribute so much to my everyday happiness that without those I don't know what I'd do, and so I think that mindset that I really need these people in my life that I care about was actually a very beneficial takeaway. Do I have any advice? First thing that I would say is that anyone going through something this hard, there's nothing you should be doing. There's nothing that you that you need to be doing. There's no way you should be feeling. It's hard to grasp that concept, but it's very important. Try not to put pressure on yourself to do the right things, but also recognize that time is very important. I'm sure anyone who's in this situation is already thinking about, using the time wisely, making sure that you don't have any regrets, but it's very easy to say I love you. It's very easy to say why you love the person. It can be an awkward conversation, sure, but those are things that are very easy to do, that you should just suck it up and do it. I just hope that this is going to be helpful for someone, and just to reiterate that there are a lot of people going through these similar things, and even in my family, that I lost my mom, and my own dad actually lost his mom when he was young, and I we tend to really isolate our experiences because they're so hard to talk about, and they're hard to talk about, and they're just plain, they're not, who would want to talk about these things, but and not that I would recommend talking about them, do whatever makes you comfortable, but realize that there are a lot of people who can empathize with situations like this, and so there's no reason to feel alone or anything like that.